Yeah, I'll start in 3, 2, 1, go. Parent, has it ever happened to you as though your parents give you some advice, but you just ignore it thinking, how could they possibly know more than you? And like, how could that possibly older person know more than me about technology or whatsoever, etc., etc. But we tell you, it actually turns out that you were wrong and they were right, and it's because of the experiences which they have gone through that this problem arises. This is the issue in the status quo. The youth and the new generation of people think they know so much because of social media and because they have so much access to more and more information, and because they're exposed to so many new things, they know so much, but in reality they actually don't. And that is why we tell you this narrative has to take place where people think that wisdom actually increases with age, and that is why we propose two things in my speech. Firstly, framing, secondly, argumentation. But before I move on to that, now let's just tell what the burden is which both sides have to prove in order to win today's debate. Panel, considering that this is a THS motion, both sides have to paint a picture of both the worlds and give a counterfactual as to which world, a world in which a narrative which exists that wiser people are like older people are actually wiser is better, or a world where the narrative does not exist and the debate is actually about the narrative and what are the impacts of the narrative on both the worlds, and which world essentially is better will win today's debate. My second speaker will be rebutting and refuting opposition's case, and my third speaker will be mentioning major clashes and be proving to you why we hold the upper hand in today's debate. So, starting off with the framing panel, two major points of framing. Firstly, what does wisdom look like, and what do we actually mean by the age factor here? Panel, we tell you like throughout history, throughout like cultural like cross-civilizational validation, we tell you makes these beliefs like that elderly actually are right in a lot of things most of the times true. What we tell you here is that most of the cultures, most of the religion, most of the traditional norms actually show and have proofs that the elderly were actually someone sort of who had a lot of knowledge, had a lot of wisdom. Now before I start getting POI bomb, let me actually frame what wisdom means in today's debate. What I mean by wisdom is people who are mature, who have emotional intelligence, have enough patience. These are the basic like universal values. It's not really about your personal belief or your personal opinion. It's more about like realizing universal values in cultures like honesty is good, hard work is good, have integrity. It's the ability to differentiate between what is right and what is wrong. It's not about having a personal belief. It's about reflecting on your past experiences and picking up on social patterns and then deciding what is good and what is not good. And that is what wisdom actually looks like in today's debate. Now, coming on to what the narrative essentially looks like. The narrative is about like the people who are buying into different beliefs rather than giving people like the time to wait, experience things, reflect on themselves, and then evaluate and then have active decisions. And this is why the narrative is so very important in today's debate. Again, panel, a huge clarification. This debate is not applicable to like people who are like mentally disabled, etc., because we just think that they're an exception in today's debate. Secondly, what is the problem taking place in the status quo? Panel, we tell you that people like the new generation of like kids, youth, millennials, etc., are given too much access to information online. They're getting more rebellious in nature, do not listen to elders, think irrationally, obviously because they think they're actually right, but they do not even have enough experiences, or they're not matured enough to know what is right, what is wrong. They get too much exposure because of things like movies, shows, etc. They have this new beliefs and perceptions that, for example, anyone who's doing drugs is so cool, etc., etc. And that is what the major issue is rising in the status quo, that people in the newer generation of people do not wish to listen to elders, and this is why we tell you this narrative is so very important in the status quo. I'll take the clear one.
Don't you think that the old experiences of these older generation shows that their wisdom just cannot apply to like the generation now?
Okay. The POI was essentially that the older generation's wisdom cannot apply to generations now. I've already framed what wisdom means to you. Panel, maturity, emotional intelligence, integrity, honesty, hard work does not change after every 100 years. That's just a principle, universal value which people have. It's not going to change over time. What if they still talk about how old thinking, might be more conservative or something also, and that is probably something they can argue about and not like having a universal value. But even on a worst case rebutting that, we're telling you that even then, like these older people also are changing. We're telling you, for example, like my grandfather 50 years back probably would have been weirded out by the fact that a woman goes to work, but now that's not the case because they are also changing. But the point here is that it is also our duty to like preserve the culture and preserve the values which we had inherited from them hundreds of years back. And it's not really about the shift which is taking place, it's more about what you're trying to preserve and uphold and what's the need of the hour. And the need of the hour is the newer generation actually listening to elders and all of that, and I'll be coming to that in my argument itself. Panel, one major argument, which is about accumulation of experience over time. What we tell you is that that over time, when you have a lot of experiences, when you go through like real-time experiences, real-time you experience new things, you have new adventures, etc. We tell you that your maturity in different hundreds of aspects increases much more. What we tell you is that wisdom is essentially like deeply rooted with the passage of time, and only this experience which you get through as age and as you grow older can you actually inherit this experience. We're telling you that repeated exposure to like various life circumstances allows better judgment and like pattern recognition among these people. We're telling you older people have navigated personal, professional and social challenges, building like nuanced perspectives of the society, of the community, and that is why their opinions are always so much superior, and if not superior, always morally the right thing. What we are telling you here is that the emotional intelligence which the older people have through experiences, the broader perspectives in which they can think, like for example, they've experienced so much, they have better values like lesser ego, lesser hate, they reflect much more on what they do. Essentially, we're telling you that you're tying the mistakes made by them in the past and making a new future based on such things, and that is why it's so very important, because people actually have something actually to look after, right? Why is this so important? The counterfactual we give you how our world looks at because of this narrative. We tell you children are actually listening to their parents and elders. We're telling you young aged people won't just listen to themselves, they actually learn a lot more about newer things and how this because of the fact that this narrative exists, children actually have someone to go to and like take advice from, and to actually go to for help. They're able to like find mentors which benefit their mental health as well. We're telling you they do not repeat the mistakes which are made by others, and it is a person's moral obligation itself to like stop someone else from making a mistake which they had possibly made in the future. Another layer under this is that a lot of cultures, religions have passed down values which we need to respect as an obligation towards those people, because they're literally our ancestors, and we're telling you that it is an obligation to not only listen to them, and because of this narrative we're telling you the younger generation are being positively impacted, and like the world we paint is obviously superior in this, and that's why I say side first.
I think this narrative that wisdom increases with age is already a very good thing, because I think it's important for people to have this idea that there's like always something new to learn, or for people to always know that they can always reflect on their past, learn from their experiences to make better decisions in the future. I think this is something that should be like a core principle or core belief of like all individuals. Let's do 4 things in this page. Firstly, rebuilding propositions case. Secondly, rebuttal. Thirdly, an extension argument. And lastly, just dealing with both the counterfactuals, like comparatives of both sides. Rebuilding propositions case in today's way. Let's like engage with whatever Pop told us in today's way. I think we get like 2 major ideas from opposition. Firstly, they tell us, oh look, there's this entire idea that because older people are more wise, they essentially have like an advantage, and about how a lot of their ideas are like outdated, and how their beliefs, their values from back then doesn't apply to the world today. 3 major responses to this. Firstly, notice how in our very first speech we already framed that wisdom is not directly buying into something or literally believing that something happened. It's the ability to evaluate things, it's the ability to analyze, reflect, pick up on social patterns, and know how to like analyze these things. So it's not directly believing into whatever someone says. B, notice how we already tell you it's not about personal beliefs, it's about universal beliefs. It's about things like truth, it's about things like honesty, integrity. I think these are things that remain constant, even though Op 1 concedes to see, even though Op 1 says, oh look, that is what we're talking about. They come up and tell us that, we're talking about things like older values, like, slavery, colonialism, etc., etc. We already tell you it's not about personal beliefs. Why? Because even if we go 200 years back, 300 years back, even when slavery was like so rampant, not everyone in the world agreed with slavery. By that very fact, we can tell you that slavery was not a universal belief. Colonialism were not universal beliefs. So obviously, when we talk about wisdom, we're not talking about people teaching you about colonialism or war. We're telling about how there's like some certain universal values that they need to stick to, not the personal values. Then thirdly, notice how even if we concede to this, even at our worst, even if we're like learning bad things, even if older people are telling, oh look, slavery is a good thing, even if they're telling, war is a good thing, it's still a good thing. Why? Because this way we're able to understand what happened and why it happened. When older people tell us that, oh look, a lot of war used to happen or violence used to happen, the ability to have wisdom, or the ability of wisdom to like increase over age, allows people to analyze things, understand why war happened, and then have scope for corrective change. So when you understand what went wrong in the past, when you understand why slavery happened, why colonialism happened, and you have the wisdom to understand why these things happen, evaluate it, the scope for corrective change, you probably won't do the same thing again, because obviously those are very negative things like they talk about. Lastly, they give us this push, look, age doesn't determine wisdom. I think it's like a general thing that, as people grow older, they gain new experiences that probably like more wiser. So this entire idea about why age doesn't matter, age doesn't determine wisdom, doesn't really add much to this debate. And even then, it's not something that's like something that's fixed. Just because there's a narrative that wisdom increases with age doesn't mean it's like a fixed belief. People can still also like not listen to older people. It's just like beliefs. And lastly, even then, it's not something that's like so linear. It's not like just because you're older you're more wiser. This narrative is more about the idea that you can always learn more, you can always reflect upon your old experiences, because with your age growing, as you're growing older, you can like learn more things, adapt to the world. Then only one major argument, then coming to the button, only one major argument that we hear from opposition really is about exploitation. It still like links back to that same idea, oh look, they can just do whatever they want because people will listen to them. Firstly, that's not true, because like we already told you, just because this narrative of wisdom increases with age doesn't mean people will literally like believe anything that they say. B, I already told you, wisdom is not believing things, it's about being able to analyze things and then evaluate it for yourself. C, they still like take this minority case where older people are like all unethical, they all want to do bad things, they're all evil people. Again, I don't think that's how it works. I think even the most cruelest, even the most cruel or evil people take like dictators or take like super bad people. I think when they grow older, maybe just when they're dying, they still realize that what they've done is wrong. So even then, just this minority that case that they talk about doesn't matter much. Even then, at the end, I think exploitation in general is something that is still worse off on their side, because in a world where this narrative doesn't exist, the younger kids that are talking about, the younger generation, is less likely to listen to anyone. They're more likely to do anything that they want. And in today's world, which is like so rapidly evolving, where things like drinking is cool, doing drugs is cool, and all these new rebellious ideas are coming, where people are not able to evaluate whether it's right or wrong. I think even at our worst, having some standard to live up to, having some standard that you can believe in, is still better than having no standard that's like holding these people. Then before moving on to my argument, I think you're right.
Does the motion only apply, or does the narrative only apply to individual reflection, or is it like younger people reflecting on older people?
I think this narrative applies to like both things. It's also like firstly about people like reflecting on their own experiences, but also about people acknowledging that other people have also reflected on their experiences, and then even then it's about us analyzing whether we should like listen to something that they've done or not. So yeah. Besides that, let's talk about one major argument in this case about how there's a positive impact on social politics. The premise of this argument is that this narrative makes people believe that you gain more experiences, you probably become like a more reliable member of society and like politics in general. Why? How? Because in most communities, societies, or countries, you often have like older people leading from the front, older people like being the head of the family or being like the head of the country. Why? Because even in most countries, you see to run for office is like a minimum age of 30. But then why is this so important? Firstly, in general, we have a better society, because when people believe in the narrative that wisdom increases with age, they're more likely to value the rules and regulations that is like placed by governments. Governments are headed by people who are like 50 years old, 60 years old, people who are wise, people who have interacted with like a lot of people, gained a lot of meaningful experiences over their life. They're more likely to place their trust, more likely to believe and value in like the rules and regulations that's like set by governments, set by people. Secondly, because we have like better politicians in general, because politicians are like old people, they're more wiser, like I said, they spend a lot of time. Like we're also able to make sure that there's like checks and balances, because when we believe in this narrative that wisdom increases with age, when someone of an older age does something that's like outright morally wrong, then we can hold people accountable, because older people, especially politicians or like older people, have this expectation, have this expectation that they need to do the right thing, they need to always be wise, do right things. And even at the end, I think in general, society in general becomes better, because you take the comparative on our side, when you have some moral standard to live up to that's given by these older people, we have more respect for cultures, we're more diverse beliefs, we decrease inequality in general. Whereas on their side, the comparative is much worse, because again, there's no regulation. New generations will just believe anything, they'll do whatever they want, there's like no control. I think having some sort of checks and balances with this wisdom is still better. This narrative stands true.
I'd like to thank the speaker for his last speech. For first
Each in 3, 2, 1, go. Panel, the narrative existing does not mean people won't have their own beliefs. It allows for interaction and listening to happen in the first place, something that does not happen on opposition. I'll be doing three things in my speech. Firstly, direct rebuttal, secondly, clashes with different layers of analysis, and thirdly, bring this debate down on three different metrics: magnitude, vulnerability, and time frame. But I'll already tell you why opposition is out of this debate. Because they make this major assumption that older people are more likely to be unwise than wise without explaining us how. We needed reasoning from opposition on why this is more likely to happen on their side of the house. And major clarification, panel, please note that this debate talks about people becoming more wiser as they grow up. Please read the motion that wisdom increases with age. It's not only about the way that we perceive other people, it's about the way that we perceive our own wisdom as well. We know that we can make better choices as we grow up because we have better experiences, we have more experiences, we also interact with more people. Now moving on to like major levels of like engagement, taking down like opposition at their best. The first major point was that different generations have like different values. Two responses against this to take this down. Firstly, on our side of the house, it's like more inclusive. Why? Because you allow for listening to take place in the first, listening to exist in the first place. Please listen to our framing. In our framing, we already tell you that within the status quo, the younger generations are not listening. They do not care. They believe the older generation has nothing to offer. This narrative in our side of the house gives that point for interaction to take place in the first place. This is again a major point of interaction that we need opposition to like engage with. Secondly, or like our social context keeps developing. Back in the day, slavery, sexism, racism, all of these things were like not frowned upon. Now they are frowned upon even by elders. Our social context, the way we perceive things changes with time. This is like very important within the context of today's debate. Now, second major point that they bring out in today's debate is that wisdom is variable and like there are multiple different factors. Firstly, in our framing, we already tell you that wisdom is about pattern recognition. It's about the way we like deal with things, the emotional maturity we deal things with. Secondly, when you live more, you experience more, you also deal with more people. This is very important because the way we deal with people also enhances us about how we're going to live our life in the future. Thirdly, even at our worst, this narrative allows children and like students to respect and look up to elders like parents and teachers who are trying to do the best for these stakeholders. And then on their third point, which is like exploitation, and this is like the biggest point that opposition brings out in today's debate. So if I'm able to break this down, the win goes to the opposition. Firstly, where's the incentivization? Why are these people going to be cruel in nature? There is no incentivization given by opposition. Why would your parent want to like manipulate you for no reason? They're looking out the best for you. Secondly, the ability to analyze, which we talk about like wisdom in general. Thirdly, younger generation won't blindly follow, because when we talk about experience, when we talk about pattern recognition, and when we talk about a narrative that wisdom increases with age, we're able to interact with our past experiences and present experiences as well. So knowing from the past, seeing our mistakes from the past, we're able to also learn from it because our wisdom has been able to increase. Secondly, the comparative on their side of the house is like way worse, because younger children, younger kids can literally do whatever they want and not literally care. The next major push was on age is not the only way of like dealing with like age is not the only way of dealing with wisdom, but it is the biggest factor. All factors that they talk about are linked to age. So if we had to choose one factor to link it to, it had to be age. If like third opposition can tell one factor that is like more visible than age, more linked to than age, then they might be able to take the debate, but they won't be able to do that. On the next major push on like the workplace, this makes no sense at all, because wisdom does not equal to like skills in the workplace. The workplace skills that you necessarily need are very different from wisdom in general, as we already told you in our framing for like wisdom as a whole. Because for example, if I'm taking a software engineering job, my wisdom doesn't matter. My skills in coding matters. That is what is very important, because companies choose what's best for them. They're already capitalistic in nature. They already want to like be most productive like possibilities for themselves. So why would they just choose someone based on age? They will choose someone based on who will be able to create more output for them. See, panel, the comparative is quite simple. On their side of the house, older people are ignored, older people are not valued, older people are neglected. Why is this very important, and why is this like necessarily bad on opposition? This is bad because these are people who have already like gained a lot of experience like living their lives as a whole. These are people who will try looking out for like the best case scenario at most times. And thirdly, when we tell to you about like social structures, when we tell to you about politics, these are like fundamental beliefs that we really need to believe in, because if you don't believe in it, entire social fundamental like, structure that we believe in will crumble. Now moving on to like major clarifications and major clashes of today's debate. First clash on like the impact on you. Panel, firstly, in the status quo, you doesn't listen at all. You need to understand that. Secondly, we tell you that it's better for you because you don't like fall into like really bad habits. This is like the comparative that really happens in like opposition. The second major like clash on like social structures, because other people reflecting on their experience, other people like they value more rules and regulations because they are placed by like older people. You value what's being placed and they are more likely to be followed. These rules and regulations are like really important for them to be followed. And then nextly, on checks and balances, we can still hold older people accountable because we expect something from them. We expect the best from them. We expect that they're able to give us knowledge, and this is very important. Now let's weigh this debate down. Firstly on magnitude, it's like way safer for like younger people. On their side, they do anything they want. Secondly, on vulnerability, it's like better for the youth. On our side, on their side, you can have like misinformation. You can like have people like listening to their friends. Thirdly, you have more experiences because people realize that as we grow, we can also learn more. Our life is like going, our life won't stay the same line. We'll keep going up because we are able to like we're able to like live more experiences. And on their side, you just have less learning because that first point of contact never really happens. Even if you didn't buy anything in my speech, the way the narrative deals with like socio-political context, something that opposition is still not engaged with, which my second speaker has like already told you about, is the most important thing because it breaks down like social fundamental like structures as a whole. Thank you for that. Thank you, Senate team of proposition.